Shalom. I learned this week that shalom not only means peace, it's also a greeting. It means hello and it means goodbye. And we're continuing our series that we started several weeks ago on unity and world religions. It's so important for us to understand each other, to see our similarities, that golden thread that is woven through all world religions, and how much alike we are. And we have a special treat for you this morning. One of our own members, our newest board member, is going to talk to you about Judaism and his experience. So Mike King, come on up. Yeah. He says no.
Hello, all. How are you? Fear almost prevented me from coming today. Almost. You see, I've never summoned the courage to speak publicly about my terror. I'm going to share with you today where my big work lays and lies, where the deep hurt still at times, feeling wounded, finds a new place and a way to hide in me. Me as the Jewish me, the different me, the frightened, skinny child me, the ego me. Sue asked me to talk about what brought me here. Well, my wife Lynn had a hand in it. You see, I first met Lynn way back in '81. I asked her what she knew about the Jewish religion. As a daughter of a career Air Force dad, all religions worshiped at the same base building. She did tell me of this one guy who sat behind her in her class, the bespectacled, kind of chubby Howard Finkelstein. She told me he was very smart. In fact, he was the second smartest person in her class. You see, wonderful, mysterious life herself brought me here. But for the sake of my marriage, I must point out to you, was my lovely, smart wife and companion of 40 years who found this place in Kingston, God. You see, Unity herself invited my family. The bricks and mortar, the gorgeous mountain views, words and philosophy books, they hold no power of persuasion. The power comes from kindness and openness and trust, which first flows through the people and then saturates the very foundation of this building. You can feel the sense of home here, right now in this place. My mother's family fled Ukraine in the late 1800s. The choice was simple: either leave your home and all you ever knew, or be killed. The worst of it culminated in 400 Jews being murdered. My father's story is much worse. In 1942, the Nazis came, busted down his parents' door, took them by overstuffed rail cars like cattle to be slaughtered to the death camps. Almost an entire 5,000-year-old tradition was wiped off the face of the earth. Almost the first monotheistic religion in this world, where both Christianity and Islam have their roots, was annihilated. Almost. My dad was 17, looking forward to college and his boyhood dream of becoming a doctor. I don't have time to tell the horrors, the stories of the murder and terror of his parents and his brother Alex, but he and his sister Clara survived. Lynn and I named our oldest son Alex after my uncle's memory. But one story I will tell The United States Army liberated the camp, Dachau. The soldiers gave out water and Hershey's chocolate bars. My dad and his friend took some, but somehow did not eat the bar, only nibbled at its edges. You see, that night was one of the worst in the camps. Death and the smells of death and dying laid all around camp. The barely recognizable human bodies writhing that night in agony. You see, they were following themselves to death, unable to control their bowels. The rich chocolate, just another way to die. Another cruel twist of fate. My dad and his friend did not sleep in the barracks that night. They climbed on top of the shed of the barracks. They trying to get away from the stench and the cries and the inhumanity that by God's grace had finally come to an end for them. But the hate did not end with the war. I wish it did. I experienced this unholy hatred directed at me far too many times as a child to go unscathed. And I learned to hate the haters. The lesson of my Jewish father and forefathers simply this: life is unsafe. Son, there are many who want to kill you only because your path to God is different than theirs. That's part of being Jewish, suffering, flavored with chicken soup and matzo balls. But it's not all bad. Because like everyone else, we love to dance and to sing, to enjoy good food and friends, and to give thanks to the ineffable. That which we all are, yet has no name. Now I tell you the sad tale of what it's like to be Jewish, not for your sympathy, I don't want it. I tell you this because I now understand and view this pain and suffering as a gift. Because suffering is not mine or yours, it's not personal. The stories are made to fit us, like fine clothing, giving each of us exactly what we need, given by God, the ultimate tailor, to help us awaken to our greater self. It's like getting punched in the gut so viciously that you go down immediately. You don't have time to think about it. That's the gift of suffering. It carries the power to wake us the damn up. Either that or we tolerate more punches and more kicks until we finally say, I've had it. Enough is enough. Dear Lord in heaven, help me. So I reached that limit at 60, about the time we started coming here. It's when I saw through the illusion of control, when I reached out in prayer, the life and death kind of prayer that gets answered only by grace and only because you are finally ready to see it, to surrender to something other than yourself. You see, my dad gave me this gift when I asked him how he got through the horror of the camps. He told me, Mike, you must put your faith and trust into something other than yourself. I wouldn't trade my dad for anyone. By the way, we just celebrated his 96th birthday. Happy birthday, Dad. So on to why I'm here. It's the people. First, I met Jan April. She cornered me and told me about this group she runs Monday nights called The Way of Mastery. I asked her what it was about. She told me it was about a guy who channels Jesus. Oy vey, not one Jesus, now there's two. Of course, I was not in the least interested. Yet after 3 years of meeting here every Monday night at the church, that Way of Mastery book and those people worked their magic on me. Opened me, triggered me, but most importantly, was generally kind to me. My timeless, kind-hearted friend, Doug. We started and now facilitate the conscious awareness group here at the church every Tuesday night, and you're all invited. Another good friend of mine, Beth, Under Avenue. You know her as Beth Overstreet. She told me Tuesday at our group to throw in some humor. As many of you know, Beth is the most serious person you'll never meet. She loves to laugh, and I love to help her do that. We laugh together. Some rare moments we shed good tears together. Where's Zach? My dear friend Zachary, what a gift he is to me, to this church, to the world. He has lived a life of service to others along with his partner, Susan. He's my inspiration. He's there for me when fear and doubt arise. So why am I here? Because you all hired a gay minister. On some preconscious level, I knew this might be a safe place. For God's sakes, you hired a gay guy. I thought the haters wouldn't be here. And if the people don't hate gays, maybe they don't hate Jews or blacks. In fact, maybe love, not hate, is thriving and alive here. So I'm here because of all of you. Our congregation has decided it wants to diversify. So how do we do this? Well, the same way you opened your arms to me, with loving kindness. And how do we accomplish this? As Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. So our work is inward first. It's our sacred duty to remember who we really are, to reconnect to our greater self, to universal self. And what a gift it is to feel, to realize truly we are all God's children. Then and only then will we find the courage and the right to be truth tellers out in the world. And finally, a quick story. Lynn and I were in Wales a few years ago at our spiritual teachers retreat. I was the last one to talk that week. I mentioned that I still carry a fear that if I open completely to love, that the pain would find a way in and overwhelm me. Wouldn't it be better not to risk more pain? We ran out of time. He didn't answer, but just before leaving, a woman I'd never met, like an angel sent from heaven, hugged me fiercely and whispered in my ear, "My dear Michael, there's only love." Thank you, Sue. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike. It's powerful. It's powerful to hear someone else's story. My husband and I live in Sloan's Lake, and there's a trail around the lake, and there's some benches that face the mountains, and I feel like I'm a little loud, Chris, if you could just a little bit. And one of the benches says, there's a little plaque on it, and it says, "Hope you never fear those mountains in the distance." And it looks at the mountains. And I Googled it to find out, well, who wrote that? It's from a song by Leanne Womack called "I Hope You Dance," which probably most of you have heard. I hope you dance. And Mike started out this morning with saying fear almost prevented him from speaking to you today. Almost. But I hope you never fear those mountains in the distance. Those mountains in the distance, as we get closer to them, we realize that we can overcome those mountains in the distance, those mountains that are the challenges in our lives. And I hope you feel great now that you're done. And that you face those mountains that were in the distance a week ago. And now you've climbed over them. The horrific atrocities on the Jewish people, generation after generation of persecution and oppression, anti-Semitism still exists today. Hard to believe in this day and age that it does. Tomorrow's Memorial Day, and we celebrate or honor, memorialize those that served in our military on Memorial Day. Started back right after the Civil War. I want us today, though, to also remember those 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust, who were killed in the Holocaust. I want us to remember those in Buffalo, those blacks that were shot in Buffalo, the children and the teachers that were shot in Uvalde this week. Hold all of this in our hearts. It's painful. Our nation is grieving from the loss. Our fear kills people, kills many others. It kills blacks, it kills children, it kills Jews, it kills gays. Why? Why? Because if someone's skin is different, someone's religion is different, someone's beliefs are different. So why are we here? I think love. Love is why we're doing this. Love is why we're doing this series on unity and world religions. Love, so that we can have compassion, so that we can look beyond just what we believe, just who we are, just how we look, just by the color of our skin. Love is why we're doing this. So we can have greater compassion and greater empathy and greater love for everyone. It's not always an easy thing to do in our humanness. We want people to be just like us. We want like-minded people to be surrounding us. Well, that's not the world. Do any of these differences that we see really matter? We're all part of one race, the human race. Just this morning, I got an email, get an email every Sunday. I wish it wasn't on Sundays because, I already got my talk planned. But I got this email from Mark Hicks, who is the founder of TruthUnity.net, and he's done a tremendous job. He's a licensed Unity teacher, and he's done a tremendous job of bringing all these resources into one place. And he writes an email on Sunday mornings, and this Sunday he was writing an email about a Unity minister, Carol Ruth Knox, who was a minister and gave talks in the 1980s. In 1981, she gave a talk about not judging others. And Mark says this in his email, and I hope that, I want to see if all of us can resonate with this, because we all can feel this way. I have never shot anybody, but all too often I have shot down others with judgment. I have never persecuted people, but many times I have diminished and marginalized others to help me feel good. I have never enslaved anyone, but too often I have used others to get my needs met. I think probably most, if not all of us, can resonate with that we have shot down others with our judgment, that we have persecuted others, that we have diminished and marginalized others with our thoughts. Carol Ruth Knox, in her talk, which I'll have to use another time, which is really powerful, talks about the prescription is not new. It's to embrace our differences, to withhold judgment, and watch our thoughts and our words. That's the prescription. Stop looking for people to be just like us in order to embrace them. And that's what this series is about, is that we're going to be looking at other world religions and looking at how we are alike, how that golden thread is woven through all the world religions, of that golden thread of truth. That no matter what culture you bring it to, or what nationality you bring it to, or what religion or religious beliefs you bring it to, that truth is truth is truth. And so we're using Reverend Paul John Roach's book, Unity and World Religions. I think we have some in the bookstores. So really, this is such a gift, this book. And what he's done is taken several of the world religions, the major world religions, and used Unity's 5 basic principles and compared these world religions to Unity's 5 basic principles. It's a beautiful way for us to see our similarities and how we're more alike than different. When we learn the story of others, the stories of others, we stop othering them. We stop making them different from us. We can't help but love them. It's what brought Mike here. It's what keeps Mike and Lynn here. The people, the love that he feels for people that are here. Love is why we're doing this. We have strong common roots with the Jewish faith. It comes from Abraham, monotheism, one God. And obviously, our Bible, the Christian scriptures and the Hebrew scriptures are all together in one Bible. Growing up Catholic, I was always fascinated with the Jewish faith. It was always that, what is that over there? What is that? I never allowed myself to explore it because I was Catholic. And they didn't get the whole Jesus thing. When I left the Catholic Church, I wanted to study Kabbalah. I've been reading more and more about Kabbalah and this mystical part of Judaism. This experiential, this inner. And so a friend of mine and I, we both wanted to study Kabbalah, and she found a rabbi that was willing to study with us, to study Kabbalah with us. But he said, in order to study Kabbalah, you must take an intro to Judaism class, a 12-week class. And so my friend and I took this class, and it was so interesting. It was mostly young couples where one of them wasn't Jewish and they were going to convert. But I was fascinated with it. My friend, who was Armenian and could relate because of the genocide in Armenia during World War I, ended up converting to Judaism. I decided I couldn't give up Jesus or Christmas or Easter, so I kept searching. I kept searching and finally found unity. But it was so fascinating to learn more about this faith that was always off limits to me as a Catholic little girl. We moved to Denver in October, my husband Kevin and I, and we're really enjoying our neighborhood and our neighbors. And two of the couples that live right near us are Jewish. And so I told them I was going to be doing this talk on Judaism, and they were so welcoming and let us, help. We'll help however you want. And so we had both couples over 2 different nights. We had them over for dinner. One night happened to be a Friday, and the couple that couldn't come that Friday because they were going to Shabbat brought over some candles. And it was the woman, her name's Linda, her grandmother's candlesticks. And the husband said, make sure you put foil under there. It's going to make a big mess, but you got to keep them, you got to burn them all the way down. So the 2 that were there that Friday, we lit the candles before we ate, and it's the woman that does it, and covers her eyes, and they sang this beautiful song in Hebrew, the Shabbat blessing. And then we went around and said, Shabbat Shalom to each other and embraced. It was beautiful to have this time with them, and just mainly a lot of our conversation was they verified what was in the book, that the author got it right about Judaism. But what a beautiful experience that the Jewish people do, the Shabbat, every Friday. Remember their oneness with God. Remember that the bread comes from the earth, that the blessings come from God. So we're looking at Judaism as compared to Unity's 5 basic principles. And the first principle is there's one power, one present, God. This comes directly from Judaism. There's only one God. There's only one power. The Jews do not really talk about Satan in the Hebrew scriptures, mentioned a few times, but not as a power of itself, just like in unity. We don't give any power to evil. Evil only has a power we decide to give it, but it has no power on itself. The second principle is there is that spark of divine within us, that we are all fully human, fully divine, like Jesus was. Jesus was not the only begotten Son. The Christ was the only begotten Son. That pattern for potential perfection. In the Jewish faith, Jews would say we're a little less than God. They have more of a relationship with God, this reciprocal covenant, where they follow the laws handed down to them, and God always gives them a second chance. It's a covenant. It's an agreement that you will follow my laws, and I will be your God, and you will be my people, is said in one of the prophets. It's more than a religion. Jewish is a way of life. To be Jewish is a culture. And because of the years and generations of oppression and persecution, I think they have really bonded through their blessings, bonded through their prayers, bonded through their way of living. It's an ongoing way of life. This covenant. Last week, I made a covenant with all of you when I was installed as a new senior minister. I hope you will give me a second chance when I don't exactly follow or live up to my highest self, because we all do fall short of that from time to time. The third unity principle is that our thoughts create our experience of life. Paul John Roach says in Unity in World Religions, the formative power of thought is sewn into the rich fabric of Jewish history and theology. The covenant relationship is one of reciprocity, and there are consequences for failing to maintain the relationship. We see this throughout the Hebrew Scriptures, that the people fall away from God and God gives them another chance. And there are consequences. This is the same in our lives. Consequences to our thoughts, consequences to our actions. Nowhere is this more prevalent than in the book of Job. Any of you who know that story, that Job was a very prosperous man with a wife and lots of children and livestock, and he was very wealthy, and he feared that it would all be taken away from him. And what happens? It gets taken away from him. And in the story, of course, it's that Satan wants God to test Job. Well, Satan, where is Satan? But in our own minds, in our own thoughts. And so Job loses everything. And he's still faithful to God. And what happens in the end is that everything gets restored to him because of his faithfulness. There's a lot more to the story if you want to read it. Book of Job. It's a beautifully written book in the Hebrew Scriptures. The fourth unity principle is that we use prayer meditation to align ourselves with that divine essence that is within us. The Jewish faith has a long history of prayer, contemplation. They're encouraged to pray 3 times a day. The Shabbat is done every Friday, the Shabbat blessing. And prayer strengthens the ties with the divine and the community. Our neighbors that came over that Friday said that the foundation of Judaism is to question to question the Torah, question the laws, look for your own interpretation of them and apply it to your lives today. It's what we do in unity. Look at the scriptures and look for the interpretation that has meaning to us. Meaning in our lives today. It's not just a book that was written many years ago. It can be useful to us now. Question. Live in the question. Charles Fillmore was extremely inspired by this. The Mishnah, which are the rabbinic book from the 3rd century, the debates and the interpretations of the 600 or 700 laws that are in the Hebrew Scriptures. And Charles Fillmore used this as inspiration when he created the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, which I use every week when I'm looking at Scripture for greater meaning. What can it mean to my life now? Because otherwise, what's the point? Why are we doing this? Why are we here? For greater love, for greater compassion, to have greater understanding of each other and ourselves. And the 5th unity principle is we have to walk our talk. We have to put action to these beliefs, to these words. And this is really strong in the Jewish faith. Mitzvah. Bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. Mitzvah meaning commandment, but more thought of as good deeds. We must mend the world. We must find justice. We are commanded to make the world a better place. A very strong connection. Paul John Roach says this in the book: the humble walk with God, the establishing of justice in all its forms, and the love of covenant loyalty or connectedness to the community and to the divine are all qualities embodied by Jesus too, who consciously strove to fulfill the law of Israel. Jesus said he came here not to destroy the scriptures, but to fulfill them. Jesus was Jewish. The apostles were Jewish. They lived by these laws, the Hebrew scriptures. They knew the scriptures. He came here to show us how to live them. I learned this week, had no idea that this came from the book of Leviticus, which is the 3rd book of the Torah, which has all the requirements and laws and rules for priests and then to be holy. And in the 19th chapter, it says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I thought that was a Christian scripture original. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Where did Jesus get that? From the Hebrew faith, from the Jewish faith, which he was. Love is why we're doing this. Love. Why we're doing this series, why we're in community, why we come here on Sunday. Yesterday I listened to a podcast by Brooke Castile. She's my daughter's coach. And she talked about our love ability. It's 2 words, love, ability, our ability to love, and how we can expand that each one of us is lovable, 100% lovable. But not all our behaviors are. But we are 100% lovable, and so we can practice loving people who maybe we don't see as 100% lovable. Maybe it's our spouse, maybe it's our coworker, maybe it's our mother, maybe it's ourselves. Practice loving that person in spite of the behavior you're not liking, in spite of the behaviors that are triggering you. Practice loving and see how that can expand your own lovability. Your lovability. We all have this capacity to love more. Are you willing to try it out? Are you willing to love? Increase your love ability? To look for the similarities instead of the differences? To love people that aren't like us, that aren't like you, that don't look like you, believe like you, pray like you? We need to stop seeing others as others and see us all as one. That's the invitation, always. It's the challenge. It's that mountain in the distance. But we have the capacity to do it. We have the capacity to love. Shalom.